Medical regulator approves the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. A heated exchange undermines the Prime Minister's response to more confronting claims about the treatment of women in federal politics. And flooding across New South Wales set to continue as the state's record rainfall refuses to let up. And Geelong star Patrick Dangerfield to miss 3 games after a sickening clash with Adelaide's Jake Kelly. Good evening, I'm Yvonne Yong with ABC News. The National Medical Regulator has approved the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for use, releasing more than 800,000 doses for supply. On Sunday, the Therapeutic Goods Administration signed off on domestic production of the vaccine, but was still undertaking so-called batch testing. And that's when each batch of the vaccine is reviewed to check it's been made to the required standards. The doses have now been cleared in what the TGA described as a major step in Australia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. 50 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine will be manufactured in Australia by CSL. An emotional Prime Minister attempted a circuit breaker today following criticism of his response to shocking claims about the treatment of women in federal politics. It follows more than a month of allegations of sexual assault, sexism and misogyny in Parliament House. But his attempt to speak directly to the women of Australia was undermined by a heated exchange with one journalist.
I will not let you down.
He meant it to be a reset.
I acknowledge that many Australians, especially women, believe that I haven't heard them.
A mea culpa after a tawdry month.
Women who have put up with this rubbish and this crap for their entire lives.
And a moment of self-explanation.
Criticise me, if you like, for speaking about my daughters, but they are the centre of my life. My wife is the centre of my life. My mother, my widowed mother, is the centre of my life.
Responding to women's fury, fuelled by fresh revelations of coalition staffers behaving disgracefully.
We must get this House in order.
A senior Liberal advisor sacked for masturbating on a federal MP's desk. The government now on the hunt for any accomplices.
I have had an absolute gutful, and my conscience will no longer allow me to remain quiet.
The Prime Minister effectively put on notice to make Parliament a safer, more attractive place for women, indicating he might even mandate a quota to boost the ranks of women in his party.
We've tried it the other way. It's not getting the results that we want to see. I would like us to see us do better on that front.
But when asked whether he'd lost control of his ministerial staff, things quickly went sour.
You're free to make your criticisms and to stand on that pedestal, but be careful.
The Prime Minister using a nationally televised media conference to suggest a press gallery journalist had made a harassment complaint to her employer, a claim News Corp rejected as untrue.
You say you want women to come forward and be supported, and then that gets dumped out. I mean, it's just staggering.
After an awful month and quite a few missteps, Scott Morrison blew his chance to wrest back control. His personal brand's been damaged and his government has been paralysed by an angry, bigger force. The Prime Minister says he'll have a lot more to say over the next month. But today, there was a sign he might seek to cauterise another wound. Saying advice from the Solicitor General on Christian Porter is sitting on his desk while he considers
how that sits with the ministerial standards.
Mr Porter strenuously denies an historical rape allegation, but Liberals are wondering whether the Attorney General may be parked until his high-stakes defamation fight with the ABC is resolved. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
So what impact has the Prime Minister's rhetoric had on his government? Here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
Undoubtedly, they've contributed. In fact, the Prime Minister today conceded that some of his language had upset people. Indeed, last week, when he suggested that protesters at the front of this building should be grateful they weren't living in countries that where you're shot for protesting, well, he was utterly tone deaf. And too often in the last few weeks, he's looked like he is more interested in politically managing the issue rather than the issue at heart. Today was his attempt at showing Australian women that he was listening. He talked of women who'd been belittled, diminished and objectified, but he undid all of that good work by reporting incorrectly, it turns out, that a News Corp female journalist had made a harassment claim to her employer. News Corp utterly denies that. This was quite a stunning own goal. He can't obviously fix all of society's ills, and nor is anyone expecting him to, but he can influence what happens in parliamentary culture and influence what happens in the Liberal Party. Today he talked to coalition folk to say that there would be face-to-face workplace health and safety training and that ministerial officers would also get some training. But the big one is making sure that people who do have complaints can do so safely and confidentially. That's still a work in place. But in summary, if today was meant to be the circuit breaker for Scott Morrison, he took 2 steps forward and about 3 steps back.
Andrew Probyn there. Now, vast areas of outer Sydney remain on high alert tonight. The wild weather event, which has been pummelling New South Wales, hasn't let up. Countless homes and businesses are underwater, and even as the rain begins to leave Sydney behind, the flood risk remains.
This is the most dangerous of duties.
Hello, is anybody home?
Rescuers race door to door, searching for residents left behind.
Hello, anyone there?
The Colo River in Sydney is raging. Its banks on both sides are littered with destruction. Some people are refusing to leave.
Have you got road access out?
Others have no choice.
We've got houses going under, we've got roads getting cut off, and the only way to get access is via boat or helicopter at this point.
This overturned boat shows what can go wrong. The family is safe, but it's a wild ride back to shore. It's left them shaken and shivering, a sensation shared by many evacuees.
I don't think anyone's really seen it this bad, I suppose you could say.
18,000 people have been evacuated across the state. Several weather fronts have authorities worried. More evacuations could be on the way.
It's catastrophic in its dimensions, and the impact will be severe. And the fact that 15,000 people may need to be evacuated in the next 24 to 48 hours is a huge concern.
At Wiseman's Ferry, a close encounter with a cargo container that could wipe out everything in its path. But this boat throttles up with just enough power. Well, it's stopped raining for now, but that doesn't mean this emergency is over. There's still a massive amount of water coming down the river. And as you can see behind me, the river is moving very quickly. And these floodwaters are going to keep on rising for the next few days. Further north, it's not only residents of the humankind trying to escape floodwaters. At Rapville, which was devastated by bushfires in 2019, the new owners of the local pub anxiously watched rising floodwaters. There was a different kind of traffic jam near Grafton as 200 head of cattle moved to higher ground. Back in Sydney, the weather is expected to slightly improve.
Even if the sun is shining in parts of Western Sydney tomorrow, which is what the forecast is, it doesn't mean rivers won't continue to rise or conditions won't worsen. In fact, they will.
A state on alert for whatever Mother Nature brings. Ursula Malone, ABC News.
And a little earlier this evening, Ursula Malone filed this update from Wiseman's Ferry.
The worry is, how much higher are these floodwaters going to rise? Now, this road normally, we're at a place called Wiseman's Ferry, and this is normally the road that goes down to the ferry. You can see where that car is stranded down the end there. Normally, the river is quite a way past that, so you can see this whole area is normally parkland, but the river has encroached on this whole area, and as you can see, it's flowing pretty quickly. Now, this afternoon there was a break in the weather which has allowed the news helicopter to go up and take some aerial footage, which really gives you a sense of the scale of the destruction and the damage that's gone on with these floods, the whole river system that's been affected. Now, there's been a lot of activity on the river here today. The area I'm in, which is about an hour and a half northwest of Sydney, there's been an evacuation warning issued for the whole stretch of river. It's 60 kilometres of river, and that involves potentially thousands of people who may have to be evacuated tonight. And otherwise they risk being cut off. And there were boats ferrying people to and from areas that are no longer accessible. And they had to contend with things in the river. There were mobile homes, caravans floating past. Some of the rescuers told me they saw several spa baths, fridges, even sofas. So there are quite a lot of hazards in the water as well.
Meanwhile, parts of southeast Queensland have been shut off with roads cut, schools closed and waterways bulging as a persistent deluge continues to drench the region. A major flood warning remains in place for several rivers and creeks, with the Weather Bureau warning the state isn't out of the woods yet.
Boonah from above, the town west of Brisbane swallowed up by relentless rain, roads in and out shut off, the high school one of 20 shut down for now.
These past 3 days, much of the southeast and western Queensland has been subject to an extreme weather event, a rain bomb that will continue for at least another day.
Southeast Queensland's big wet proving the perfect outside excursion for some.
Hopefully it eases off. Otherwise we've got a birthday party to cancel on the weekend.
Football fields resembled swimming pools at Jimboomba as flooded roads were closed to cars.
And if you do not have to be on the roads, please stay off them.
It failed to deter some. At Loganholme, this was a familiar sight. At Greenbank, one car almost entirely submerged. Just a few inches of its roof remain above water. Its passenger made it out just in time.
It's just like a little causeway and, it's a nice flat bit of road, so I don't understand how they've done it at all.
At Pullenvale, cars backed up at blocked roads while it was an unconventional trip to school for this student at Deception Bay.
We have dozens of gauges that have seen over 120 millimetres and 8 gauges that have seen over 200 millimetres.
Parts of Logan and the Scenic Rim are on flood watch as waterways continue to swell.
We have a major flood warning for the Logan River at Bow Desert, and we also have a major flood warning for the Brisbane catchment at Worrell Creek.
It's prompted Logan City Council to open its Disaster Coordination Centre. For some Logan residents, the extreme weather is an all too familiar scenario.
My in-laws have farmland over the back here behind all the river, and the last lot of flooding that came through, they lost their entire crop.
On the Sunshine Coast, Mount Coolum resembled a waterfall. After almost 8 days of nagging rain, the Weather Bureau says it won't be until tomorrow afternoon when we're likely to see a glimpse of sunshine in southeast Queensland.
This event is not quite over yet.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
The first batch of COVID-19 vaccines has arrived in Papua New Guinea from Australia. The doses will be given to health workers as infections in the country continue to surge. An Australian medical team has also flown in to help.
Much-needed vaccines and Australian medical workers to help in a crisis.
Papua New Guinea is a resource-poor country and has a very fragile health system. And they have many health challenges, even before COVID.
This initial 3-person team is expected to be followed by others.
Our friends in Australia, they continue to step in every time we need help.
With hospitals running out of beds, these COVID-19 makeshift wards are being set up in the capital. They'll need extra workers, as will the rural areas. The Australian Air Force has been delivering essential supplies to beat the virus.
In Papua New Guinea, we see that there have been almost 400 recorded cases in the last 24 hours, and that as a consequence, Australia is stepping in and stepping up to assist our neighbours.
COVID-19 cases have more than tripled in PNG in the past month. The country's biggest hospital says 70% of symptomatic people are testing positive, and there are warnings more people are likely to die. Health workers will be the first to get the vaccines.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a relatively short period of time to ensure that we make the most of this opportunity of administering 8,000 vaccines.
Vaccinations for frontline workers are expected to begin this weekend.
but some of them are hesitant to get the jab because of misinformation spreading through the country. The government is planning an education campaign, but changing some people's minds could be difficult. Natalie Whiting, ABC News, Port Moresby.
10 people, including a police officer, have been killed in a mass shooting at a supermarket in the US state of Colorado. SWAT teams were sent in after the gunman started shooting just before 3 p.m. local time in the city of Boulder. This woman and her son managed to escape.
And I just said, "Nicholas, run." And he said, "No, don't move." I said, "Run right now. We have 3 seconds." And he started running.
Police have taken a suspect into custody and say he's being treated for injuries. It's the second mass shooting in the US in a week. 8 people were killed in Atlanta last Tuesday. At least 7 people are dead and dozens injured after a massive fire tore through a refugee camp in Bangladesh. The fire moved quickly through several blocks of congested shanties in the southeastern city of Cox's Bazar. Shops, health centres and other buildings belonging to humanitarian organisations were destroyed. The camp is home to hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees who are fleeing the military crackdown against them in neighbouring Myanmar. An independent review of last year's bushfire on Kangaroo Island has revealed resource deficiencies, communication breakdowns and insubordination within the country fire service. The disaster led to the deaths of 2 people and raised over 200,000 hectares of land. Local residents say park management will be critical in reducing the risk of another catastrophic fire.
The independent report into the monster blaze has found the firefight could have been handled much better.
I think CFS, particularly headquarters, has a lot to learn from it, and the volunteer side of it will probably have to learn a fair bit as well.
Keep pushing through, we're doing okay.
Sparked by extreme weather conditions, 2 lives were lost and 87 homes destroyed, while tens of thousands of livestock stood no chance. The report found there weren't enough resources and technology, and that there were communication breakdowns, insubordination and failed firefighting procedures.
People on the ground chasing fires are a much better situation to make urgent decisions than waiting for a chain of command to come back.
Also highlighted in the report the disproportionate level of resources put into protecting the Flinders Chase National Park, some say at the expense of private property and infrastructure. Others have concerns about management of the parks.
The fact that there hasn't been any significant, backburning done in the national parks creates this huge fuel load that, obviously on January the 3rd, when the fire made its run, there was nothing to stop it.
Neither the CFS nor the Emergency Services Minister Vincent Tarzia were available for interviews. However, in statements, the CFS says all 11 recommendations would be implemented, while the government says it's also making changes, including having CFS staff permanently based on Kangaroo Island, as well as vehicle tracking technology. Island firefighters insist that changes must happen quickly.
Hopefully this is a big enough kick that people realise that doing nothing doesn't work, and doing a little bit doesn't work. There has to be a sustained effort.
The findings are being discussed at a meeting on the island tonight. Matthew Smith, ABC News, Adelaide.